By President William Ruto alongside other stakeholders, including the Central Organization of Trade Unions and other union representatives for the year 2024. Chile, of course, Wednesday morning in Nairobi, as the celebrations will be underway, and we'll be getting the live link from Dennis Otieno, who is at the Uhuru Gardens, and our EBO team, alongside, of course, Jimmy Mbogo, who has given us an upbeat assessment of the preparations at Solidarity House, where Koto officials have been preparing for in making their way to Uhuru Gardens, where the celebrations will be marked. At 11 p.m., the head of state will be at Uhuru Gardens, and he will be received, according to the program, by the Secretary General of the Central Organizations of Trade Unions, Koto Francis Atwoli, and he will be making his much-awaited speech from the presidential lectern in regards to increase in minimum wage for Kenyans for Labor Day 2024, and also the issue of the overall reduced disposable income, according to the Federation of Kenya Employers, and the operating cost for companies, and also the investments that the government is attracting to the country. This against the backdrop of the doctors' strike, which has entered day 49 today, shy by 1 day of the 50-day mark since the industrial action began by the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, KMPDU, who are still continuing with their strike, saying that the government has failed to honor the 2017 collective bargaining agreement. And the proceedings will be live here on Citizen Television as we proceed also with the discussion as the band prepares to entertain the guests who will be seated shortly at the Uhuru Gardens, despite the chilly weather in Nairobi this Wednesday morning. Back to studio. Yes, Cyprian, you had a point, please, before I come to Senator Waba.
Yes, I wanted to say that I've listened to how the Honorable Senator, what she has said. I want to say that when you look at, we agree that the government wants to reduce the wage bill to 35% of the revenue, according to the Act. But again, to the same government, there are several other ratios that they have not adhered to. If you look, for example, the ratio of maybe one police officer to citizens, the ratio is below. If you look at the ratio of teacher to student, is below. Student to lecturer, I can tell you it is below. For example, if I talk at the university level, I haven't seen any effort from the government in terms of recruiting more lecturers. We have CBC. We are heading to 2029 when they'll be at the university. These are students who have been brought up in a system that is student-centered. And according to the Inter-Universities Council of East Africa, they did a research and a survey, and they found that Kenya requires about 20,000 fresh new lecturers to handle the students who are coming up. The government has not talked about this. In fact, when you look at police officers, teachers, I can say there's a plus to the government, because they are recruiting. We saw 50,000 and 20,000 plus teachers for this year. When it comes to TVET, we have seen that. But I'm talking us now was when it comes to lecturers, we have not seen a deliberate effort of recruiting more lecturers, about 20,000 in less than 2 or 3 years. What that means is that these students, by the time they reach the university, they will not be having lecturers who will give them that special attention that they have been getting all along, and we may lose it at that end. The second one is, when you look at the 35% ratio, yes, it is good, they want to keep that, but how about these other ratios? When we talk of Vision 2030, Kenya was envisioned to have decent work. Yes, it is okay for us to create work down there, which is not very decent, I can say. How about the decent jobs, including the parastatals that she has said? Our problem is we don't want parastatals that are having duplication of roles. But there's nothing wrong in having creation of a new parastatal if it's going to have a mandate that is special to that, because that's also another way of getting more jobs. This government, UDA, their theme was creation of jobs. We cannot say that creation of jobs only means ile job ya hasla peke yake. We are looking at this other, because people have taken students to schools, have graduated. Every year we graduate thousands of students. Where will they go if the government is not doing that? Coming to the issue of contract. You don't want to make workers to work under duress or by punitive measures, then we will not. As Senator Onyonka has said, world over, government is permanent and pensionable. That doesn't mean that I will misbehave. In fact, I can tell you I'm from the union. We have seen a number of our workers being sacked because of misconduct. Why? Because there are clear regulations that guide that. But if we want to say that, the examples we are looking at, actual contract, if we are going to then to go to contract and the senators are here, then let them triple or 4 or 5 times our salaries so that now we move into that direction. Why am I saying this? Because those who are normally on contract, one, they get very high salaries. Two, they get things like mortgages at a very low percentage, or 3 or 1%. They get grants for their vehicles, and the honorable senators are aware about that. You know, if you are a cabinet secretary at PS, I will serve my 5 years and go home because I have a mortgage of 40 million. But the rest of the workers, the position is permanent. Lastly, the reason why we should not move away from that, it will also injure our economy. Because I can tell you, personal loans all over the banks, if you go there, are based on permanent and pensionable. Because if a bank realizes, and I'm saying from experience, if a bank realizes you are on contract, they not give you a loan because they say your loan will end next year. Okay. We are not sure whether you will be there. So when you look at it, honorable senators, I want to argue that when these things comes to your floor, kindly reject it with the totality. Yes, Senator Rwaba, you had a point, please.
Maybe let me first start by saying you have an option to adapt, to evolve, to compete, or to die. Those are the options in life, generally. As a government, as a private institution, as an individual, you have an option to adapt and evolve, or to just forfeit everything, now didimie, and you die. Okay. Now, having said that, let me say this. As it stands now, the requirements that we have in law for you to remove a permanent and pensionable person is that you must be able to terminate that contract, pay the dues that are there, pay the gratuities that need to be paid, and do away with that particular contract as it is. To begin with, Moses Kuria's proposal is a proposal that is even yet to table to cabinet. But he has put it together, and I know that after this disaster management and whatever that's going on with the country, it is a conversation that is going to be had. Now, I've told you...
And would you support it?
Ayub, I've told you.
Yes.
We had an opportunity in 2013, but the government of the day there did not dare. They did not have the guts to do what's right for Kenya and for the Kenyan people.
On the wage bill issue? On
the wage bill issue, on folding up 75 parastatals, which, by the way, if they had done that, we would not probably be talking about this other option of Moses Kuria. They did not do it. So now we are further down in the hole. What Moses Kuria is doing is saying we must have this conversation. Okay. And the conversation is, number one, Ayub, the culture that we have in the civil service is horrible.
Okay, Senator.
The culture in terms of service provision is a really, but let me just allow me to say this because there is not one Kenyan. And if I'm going to, be honest and have Kenyans give feedback in terms of services that they get from government offices, whether it is immigration, birth certificates, whatever services, even in Huduma centers. I want you to open up that line and ask Kenyans, have you been getting good services from government offices? And hear the feedback. The culture that we have with the employees currently, the civil servants in office, is horrible. It's a culture of I don't care because I'm permanent and I'm pensionable. And even if there is disciplinary measures that have been put in place by the contractual agreements, by the trade unions, I can tell you that we have some very good talent in terms of director level or department heads who come in, very good blood, young blood. They're excited to change that culture. They get in there, they're given a team of 20 to 30 people who have an attitude of, I don't care and you can't fire me. Then what happens is the good talent is what is lost because that person realizes very quickly this team that I've been given to work with is not going to be able to take these services where they should be. So then we have good talent resigning. So I will continue to say, open up the lines.
Thank you.
Ask people what good services they have been receiving from civil servants.
Okay, thanks. Senator, let me ask you then this. I'll come to you, Senator Onyonka, because you have mentioned the wage bill question on one part, and you have mentioned the contractual agreement that civil servants ought to have, officers, those who serve Kenyans. What's the correlation between giving government officials contracts and lessening our wage bill? Isn't it a matter of living within our means?
No, number one,
because the point is, if you have said it's based on performance contract,
yes,
and
the easiest,
and the performance is underwhelming, then you will fire that person.
You know what I'm trying to explain here without saying it in black and white.
Yes, what is the correlation between
when you have
on contract and reducing the wage bill?
When you have 5 house helps in your house, those who are privileged, and you realize 4 of them are doing nothing, you give them tasks. They won't do the tasks. They fire themselves. If I put you on a performance contract, it is up to you to prove your worth and your value to that organization. I'm not just waking up and saying, I don't like you, Ayub, go. The performance contract is the first thing. If you ask me, aside from dealing with all the ghost workers and all the dead workers who are still on payroll, if you ask me, if you take the whole workforce, structure it, because on change management, which is something we don't talk about. You know, I come from the corporate world. So a lot of these things I'm talking about, I'm not talking about from theory. I'm talking about I have been part of change management on very high level. I used to work for Facebook, and I'm telling you, you take your workforce, you structure them into outputs, because we are in 2024, people work on outputs.
Okay.
You structure them into outputs, into performance, and I can promise you, Ayub, if you allow, and if Kenyans actually try to see that it is the best interest of Kenyans, if you allow that to happen, it is not government who will fire people. Many people who know they have been doing nothing, they have been hanging out in offices, will resign.
To my question again.
Will resign.
Okay, to my question again.
So you are going to be dealing with the wage bill.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
To my question, and then on the wage bill again. If you support the contractual terms as proposed by CS Moses Kuria, why then does the government on the other end and on the other hand creating positions for chief administrative secretaries? Okay.
One, the government is not creating positions.
Who is creating?
The positions of chief administrative secretaries has always been there. What the Kenya Kwanza government has done, no, you can laugh all you want, because you have interviewed CASs here before from the last government. What we are doing is ensuring that we are within the law, and that is why we took it back to Parliament to ensure that there is a legal framework. But the position has been in existence illegally. So Kenya Kwanza has not created a position. We have actually gone in and said, how are we going to ensure that we have a legal framework? But aside from that, I like what my co-panelist has said here, that it is not an issue of just folding up 75 parastatals because they exist. It's an issue of saying these 75 parastatals are duplicating the work of other parastatals. But if there is a need today, like for instance, if I go into the digital economy, the Ministry of ICT and Digital, there is actually a need of 2 or 3 more parastatals that need to be created because times have changed. And what I'm trying to say, it is not that we are stopping the efficiency of government services by not creating parastatals or by not hiring people. But there has to be what we call a factory reset to go in and see that there are parastatals that literally, even today, if you ask them what is your mandate, I've given you a very good example. Kenya Tourism Board, look at the mandate. Go and look at the mandate of Tourism Fund. Go and look at the mandate of CG meetings and what of Kenya, blah, blah, blah. Then look at the mandate of KIC. You look at it and you're like, these people are doing the same thing. And it's a bloated workforce. So, but then it does not stop us from even going. Now we have a ministry of small enterprises, SMEs, and it doesn't stop us from saying, because we are intentional on creating jobs, let us create a parastatal on SMEs and hustlers.
Okay, that is lovely diversion from my question.
Did I divert?
Yes, yes, you did.
What was your question?
What's the value that a CAS will add to a ministry?
Oh, number one. Now we have the disaster that has happened. I'm giving just a very basic current example. We have a disaster that happened. I'm personally very disappointed with the ministers that are in office, collectively, not any individual. Because what I feel they have done is that they have put their hands up and said the president should address that issue. That is why we saw the president juggling in his schedule yesterday. He had like so many important meetings that he should have attended to as a head of state. But because he felt the need that his presence is required in Mai Mahiu, he also flew to Mai Mahiu. Now, if you look at the workforce of a cabinet secretary in terms of even just physical appearances in Parliament, on the site, to go and meet on these parastatal heads and who, it is like requiring a cabinet secretary to be omnipresent. When you look at the job description of a chief administrative secretary, who is supposed to be technically the assistant of a minister, it then makes that office of the minister more efficient because, number one, at this time of disaster management, the people that we should have boots on ground, if you ask me, would have been the chief administrative secretaries to go down on the, so that we are not doing press conferences from KICC with our government spokesperson in air-conditioned rooms. No. So that we have government, actual government representatives on the ground, requiring, doing what government is supposed to do, ensuring that the funds, the disaster management funds, are not being misused by the people who have been put on, ensuring that people like the KDF, National Youth Service, are actually doing what they're supposed to do. That position, as much as people want to say, oh, it is just a position to enlighten a few, look at how overwhelmed the ministers are now with this one single disaster. If they have to refocus all their energy on disaster management, and you know, you can say all you want to say about this. Yeah. Moses Kuria was in Mathare the other day. At the same time, he was trying to deal also with all the issues on the public service and the structures that we are putting. At the same time, Moses Kuria was required to appear in Parliament. At the same time, and I'm telling you, this, for me, if you ask me, Moses Kuria is the performer in that cabinet, and still I could see that he was overwhelmed. What's the position? What was the role of the principal? The position of the principal the principal secretary is an accounting officer, is the technocrat, is the person behind the engines of the department heads. But the CAS, the chief administrative secretary, is supposed to act as an assistant, literally the right-hand man of or woman of the minister.
We'll expound more on that. Yes, Senator Onyonka.
First of all, I'd like to make a request to the doctors who are on strike that, given the circumstances that we are operating in today and the whole of this week, I would wish that they would actually reconsider and take a short break and most probably draw themselves back to their facilities to help the cases that we are seeing happening here.
Yeah.
Senator Oroba has said incredible things, and I respect her position. She is on the government side. So I want to mention to her what our side thinks. Number one, the culture of the Kenyan public service is not that our workers are illiterate, they're lazy, they're weak, and as a result, their performance is based on basically data and facts which don't exist. And as a result, all of them need to be fired so that they can even go. And if they want to sign contracts, that's fine. Performance contracting actually exists even right now. All government departments, all government ministries must sign a performance contract every year on their targets and what is achievable and all that. The culture of our labor force is that we as the political class decided that we are going to get rid of meritocracy. So we are employing our relatives and clan members and tribal members because we have a political opportunity, and we are hiring actually people who are inept. So for the presidency of this republic of mine called Kenya, if President William Ruto needed to be serious, let us look at the meritocracy matrix. Let's look at the people we have hired. Why are we having fake degrees? Right. The culture that we are talking about has nothing to do with anybody introducing punitive measures to make Kenyan workers perform. All we need to do is follow the law, make sure we hire the best, make sure we provide them the criteria and give them the targets they're supposed to achieve. They do. Why? My evidence, my brother Ayub, is this. Look at Kenyans when they are in Rwanda. Look at their performance. Look at Kenyans when they go to Dubai. Look at Kenyans when they are in, look at the Kenyans in the US. Any Kenyan who is out there will work and perform. The only problem is when you come here, what do? We then destroy this ethic which had been built in us, where we know even internationally, when a Kenyan asks for an international job, it is known he will perform. It is known he will not be corrupt. But look at what we have right now. You kill meritocracy, you then begin to give favors to yourselves because you come from that politically acceptable position, whichever party you belong to. If it was 5 years or 3 years ago that my sister is talking about how the government which was there did not do anything. The government which was there was deliberately making sure that they entrench their people and their positioning so that they can then benefit from the benefit of state. There was no question about meritocracy, credibility, all these things. Number two, Ayub, my sister said, you have to adopt. If you don't adopt, you go. The truth is, yes, I am willing to adopt, but don't violate my rights. Because my rights are human rights. Okay. So don't come and tell me when I'm in the middle of my job, when I've borrowed, when I've been using a system that I've created because my salary is 20,000 shillings or 30 a month, and that is what I'm earning as a police officer. And now you want to tell me that there's a possibility that you're going to take a police officer and give him the option that he only needs to sign a contract for 5 years or 3 years or whatever you want to do. My conviction and belief, and I'm going to try and persuade the other side, public service needs public employees who are properly trained and grounded, where meritocracy has been used. Ayub, look at what we do when we are doing vetting. Who are vetting people the other day? They are people who are pro-government. They brought somebody whom they are asking questions whether the guy knows what GDP is, and he doesn't. Who brought his name there? These are, look at how SRC works. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission has been in office for the last 12 years. They cannot even create a rationalized public service. So before you solve the problem, 1, of the fake employees, 2, of the ghost workers, 3, of paying salaries using the system which Madam Nyakango has talked about, how salaries are increased. That is why I keep saying, Ayub, the problem of Kenya is not the wage bill. The problem of Kenya is what my sister said, the culture. What is the culture? The culture is not that we are lazy. The culture is that we have destroyed the public service by making sure that we employ people who are unqualified, who are going to do us favors, and we bring individuals irrespective of what their capacities are. And that is why I disagree with her, that you were talking about the CSs. Kenya does not need to employ another set of individuals who are called CSs. The permanent secretary has got his deputies, has got directors. We need to give people responsibilities which are not political.
Okay. Have you opened the line?
The last point.
Have you opened the line?
The last point. We have politicized our public service. We employ police officers according to the political party that has come to office. We employ people in the army the same. Then we have corruptionized the system where not the best qualified is going to be given the job, but the one who's able to raise money, 200, 300, 400,000 to pay so that this individual gets
it should be proper if we got, I wanted you to ask the question either through a poll or to the people.
Yeah. Of course, we'll
and ask them how do they feel about the services and the offices that they go to seek government services.
Of course, we'll sample.
Do they feel like they get the same services if they were going to go to a Safaricom shop, which is also partly government? Do they feel like the services from civil service is the same if you go, for instance, to a corporate where someone understands that they have to perform and deliver? Because you see, that feedback is critical, because if Kenyans are honest, me being one of the Kenyans, even he's talked about police men. We have the best trained police service. But some of these police officers, how they offer their services, how they treat Kenyans at the station, and I'm talking even about the gender desks. And you know, I'm in government, but I'm being honest. Some of this culture that you're talking about is not because we have hired our relatives.
Okay.
There's a culture that's breeding.
Okay. No, we'll sample.
There's a culture that's breeding in civil service,
and we always
we must address it.
There's a difference between
contractual
and contractual.
We must address the culture and what we need to change.
And the common denominator throughout this show, either for me, for my colleagues Sam Gituku and Trevor Mbije, is that we sample the feedback of the Kenyan people. And we'll be having them here shortly. Yes, Ombati.
It's okay. I'll almost predict what the feedback will be saying. I want to say that I'm best suited to say what happens to a Kenyan worker because I'm in that level. One, this is, if I use our union, I want to tell you that we have people who are demotivated. Why? One, they're earning a salary that is too low. These are people who don't go on leave. These are people who don't have a medical cover. And these are government workers. These are people who lack the basics. Promotion that we are talking about here. Ayub, I can tell you, I have colleagues in our workplace who have worked in one job group for the last 16 or 17 years.
Yes.
So how do you expect that person, because we have what we call motivation. If that person is not motivated by the same government, you expect him to give better results? She has talked about corporate sector. I can tell you in corporate sector, the things are laid well down, that after 2 or 3 years, you get a promotion. When you come to the public service, either it is, do you know your boss? Or has somebody from above said you get a promotion? So if we don't deal with those things, even if the feedback is given there, I can tell you the root cause is what we need to treat. These workers who are in the government sector, are they getting what they ought to get? Another day, SRC passed car loans and mortgages. I can tell you, maybe for state officers, they are getting it. Come to the public sector, people are not getting it. If I talk of our people, lecturers, they are not getting it as I'm speaking now. Why? Aren't we Kenyans? So those are the things we are saying, that people who are demotivated, a worker who is demotivated, you cannot expect that worker to give results. Whether you change the terms and you bring them on contract, still, if they are not motivated, they will feel left out, and therefore it will affect the end results. So mine is to my sister is, as they are going to look at that, let them look at those things. We have workers. Your child is sick. You cannot get access to take them to hospital. Why? Because your employer will tell you, we don't have funds to pay to the service providers. So at the end of the day, what happens? Salaries get delayed. We are deducted loans. They are not remitted. Taxes are deducted and not remitted. You don't expect those workers. NHIF is deducted.
Allow me, welcome
fund.
You go to a hospital, you'll be the last one, and then you get a poster there saying that if you are from Moi University, we will not treat you. That one, in fact, then people are like, then why are you a lecturer? If a lecturer can be told that they will not be treated. Remember, in the society, people will treat us highly as learned people, but at the end of the day, what we go through, lastly but not least, we cannot even be invited even to Harambe in our village, a professor. People will say, that one, we already know that he doesn't have even anything. So what you're saying, we must be motivated fast. People are so highly learned, but what is the pay that the government is giving them? Sometimes, and I want to say this, you find that even in the same government sector, they have talked of SRC. Come to lecturers. I have lecturers. You teach a student who graduates, joins Kengen or Kena, those are government parastatals, and gets a pay that is higher than a lecturer. Yet that lecturer has a master's degree and sometimes a PhD. But the student doesn't have it. What is the work of SRC in rationalization of that? So at the end of the day, you tell that lecturer to be motivated?
Okay.
Ayub, no doubt,
yes, Senator.
no doubt we have problems. By the way, I'm not sitting here saying I'm the one saying civil service has a problem. We have an issue. In fact, the thing he has talked about where you go to hospitals and they have written, it is happening to so many government bodies where a hospital, even a private hospital, will specifically say, if you're coming from this specific government organization, we are not going to treat you. That is a big problem. If you go to Coptic Hospital, which is now taking off the load from Kenya National Hospital, you know, because it's literally... Anyway, if you go there, they even have written an official communication. We don't take NHIF and don't bother us with NHIF. We have fundamental problems within the civil service. For me, first of all, a civil servant not having a medical cover, for me, it is a serious concern. And I'm not saying that that is something that should be overlooked. I'm also not saying that the issue of motivation is something that should not be overlooked. As a matter of fact, it is this government for the first time in the history of this country, through that commission, through the committee that was put together, led by Maraga, to look into the welfare of our National Police Service members, our police officers, because the craziness that is there is that you cannot expect a police officer to conduct themselves in a manner when you are actually not even housing them, when they are staying in, and you know, all these things are intertwined. If you look at now the Kenya Kwanza agenda, when we're talking about affordable housing, the first units that were done here on Gara, most of the beneficiaries are who? It's police officers. The other units that are being done, so all these things are intertwined. But I'm saying, because we are Kenyans, and we are the same Kenyans who will go and say, how watu wa serikali, hata ukienda kwa police station staki kwenda, hata ukienda huduma center staki kwenda because the services are so bad. We have to be the same ones to say, okay, how do we address the issue of having a rogue civil servant because they are highly trained? By the way, it's not an issue of capacity. If you look, our Kotu leader, who, by the way, should go home. If you look at some of the reports that he puts out in terms of our human resource, Kenya has the highest trained human resource in all sectors. But by the way, even when you go to talk to the lowest level civil servant, they are still more trained. I've lived in Scandinavian countries for over 10 years, and we have highly trained people, but they have chosen to have a culture of not performing. Now, for me, and allow me, because every time I say that, I see Senator Onyonka getting jittery and he wants something to say. For me, the reason I was even insisting on saying, let's start with the problem. The problem is that the services that should be given are not being given. Someone is saying analyze the root cause.
Okay.
The root cause of it are so many. There's a dichotomy of things that need to be addressed. But then, also as a professional, when you do factory reset, when you go on change management, the first hard decision is to say, this cannot go on. That is what I've seen Moses Kuria saying, this cannot go on. The second difficult decision...
Hang on, Senator.
Can I complete my thought?
You will complete because...
There's something I keep wanting to say, and then every time I'm almost getting there, it's not happening. The issue of protecting workers has to be handled in the same rigorous manner that the trade unionists are handling. But what I, as an individual, as a person who also, because I'm also on contract, by the way, I'm on a performance. I've seen someone online writing that even politicians, they don't perform and they're not on contracts. No, that's why they have a 5-year renewable contract. And you either fire them on the ballot or you re-elect them. And some of them even can be fired before the ballot ends through impeachment. Those are the governors. We've just impeached the deputy governor of Kisii County for all sorts of things. Okay. So I think maybe Kenyans also don't understand when we're talking about performance contract. A performance contract can even go for 10 years. You can have a performance contract for 20 years. You can have a performance contract for 1 year. So those are now things we will have to sit down. We've just hired teachers. Can you put teachers on a performance contract for 2 years? Absolutely not. You now have to sit down in the different various industries and talk. Teachers, what is sensible for teachers? What is sensible for healthcare workers? Because also institutional memory, Ayub, is very important for government. You can't keep hiring and firing people. So even when you're talking about performance contracts, even in the healthcare center, you can't, the way we are saying, we are firing, we are hiring. There is something called institutional memory that we cannot afford to lose as a civil service.
And because government do exist at any given time, and institutional memory is very important. But Moses Kuria's remarks, not nice words for the doctors as well, came against the backdrop of the 2017 collective bargaining agreement. Senator Onyonka, I'm coming to you shortly. And Senator Uroba, no party was forced to append their signature.
Absolutely.
To the document at the time.
That's CBA, yes.
And why then is it difficult for the government to honor that? And why lessen the pay for... The
most contentious issue on that CBA is that the lowest paid medical professional, who we are calling an intern, should be paid 212,000. That is the most contentious issue. By the way, it is not an issue of the highest paid or the other things. Where we are failing to agree with the unions and what is on there, 212,000.
Where the government is failing.
We as a whole, because who is government, Ayub? You are government.
The other party wants...
We are all government.
Senator Uroba, to get the issue right, the other party is for the wholesale implementation of the agreement. Yes,
which includes the intern pay, which is 212,000. That is the most contentious issue.
Why is it?
You have asked why it's not working.
Yes.
Having the privilege, and now this is where I thank God I am an intern also in the Senate of Kenya. I have looked at the budgets. I have looked at where we fall short. I have looked at, we recently passed the debt management policies and things. And you know, people say, oh, if senators can get 500 and whatever thousand, senators are 67 at maximum. We're not talking about 67 interns. We're talking about thousands and thousands of interns. And this is not a senator, by the way, give or take. It is also when you go, you know, you can't just take apples and tomatoes and say, fire CASs, that money can pay. That money, by the way, cannot pay the interns still. So I have the privilege of...
No, it can. I mean, if you have 50 CASs...
I don't go there. I went down in a breakdown, and it can't sustain it. So let me just say this.
Yeah, please finish.
If there was a goodwill or an understanding from both parties, and particularly from the unionists, who I think some of them, the leaders, are politicizing the matter and using it for political gain. If there was an understanding that, fine, you're saying you cannot meet 212.
Yeah.
Where can you meet? Because interns can also not be paid. Interns must be compensated for the work they do. They do the heavy lifting. And that's what we are saying. Get back to the table and negotiate. Get back to the table and say, you can't pay me 212,000. what are you proposing? Because also
is what the government said.
And then you negotiate. Ni kama kwenda kwa soko. You go, you're like, these tomatoes are 5 shillings. You say, no, it's too expensive. And you meet each other halfway. If 70,000 is too little, why are you walking off of the table? Negotiate. That's what professionals do. And then the other thing that I want to push is that Kenyans don't even know this. The healthcare is devolved. And the people you see on the streets are about 11 counties or so. Counties. Because some go to Nandi, the doctors are working. There are so many counties where the governors did not even want to negotiate. You know what they did? And I know this, even Kisii, it's about to happen in Kisii, I think today or tomorrow. The governors, because they want to save the lives of the people in their counties, have said, I'm putting an end to this, and I'm going to fire you, and they've put out advertisements.
Okay.
In Nandi, when they went out and they did not negotiate, the governors, who are the CEOs of the counties, and because health is devolved, the governors said, we must ensure that we have doctors. Imagine we have disasters now, and the Kisii training fellow, KTRH in Kisii, is closed.
Okay. According to Dr. Patrick,
can you people imagining this? Like that there are hospitals that are closed.
Hold Senator Orwoba to account, because
can you imagine?
There is the aspect about there is no fund, there is no money to pay to meet the cost of the intern doctors. But let me quote what Dr. Margaret Nyakango had said, the controller of budget. She said sometime last year, quote, I cannot tell where the money goes from after it's removed from what was originally budgeted. I have put this before, this data, for you to believe that there is such term called budgeted corruption. She was talking about inflation of salaries of top state officials and loopholes during the budget-making process. Why not seal, as a senator, and Tonyonka as well, why not seal these loopholes as leaders? Then we have enough pool of money to pay professionals like doctors, which ought not to be debatable.
Absolutely. And by the way, I have such high respect for the control of budget, Margaret. And once every while, I actually call to get guidance in terms of numbers and what is happening. And I don't believe she was lying. I do believe that she laid the facts as they were. What I also encourage her to do is come back and now give the report of how those loopholes have been sealed by the Kenya Kwanza government. Yesterday, you saw me putting out a post saying that everyone is saying that disaster, floods, wapi serikali, where's the president, what are they doing with the money? And I directed, because as a responsible leader, I know that we have 2% of disaster management allocated to each county for disaster management. I asked this question on my social media pages. I'll ask it now. Why are all the governors quiet? You know why they're quiet? They're sitting on 2% of disaster management funds, and they're still putting their hands out to national government saying, of the 4 billion that we have had, you're allocating to disaster management, give Nakuru County, because Nakuru County has been highest hit. No, Susan Kihika. You have 343 million, 2% of your allocated for disaster management. First of all, account for your 343 million, then put your hand out to national government. And if we are not going to hold these county governments accountable, we can also say, fold up the counties, let's revert to national government. Because why are we giving you money that you don't want to spend in the correct form? Fold them.
I'm sure as a member of the Public Investment Committee,
thank you so much.
And even close the Senate. We go home. Because Senate is supposed to oversight county governments. But if county governments are not working, and I'm a senator saying, fold county governments, I'm also saying I'll go home.
Which is not a very welcome proposal as per many quarters. Yes, Senator.
Senator Orwoba,
sounds radical.
In that case, I completely congratulate you. Today you've spoken like the leader of the opposition.
I've spoken like a reasonable leader.
Real Kenyans.
Yeah,
the point,
fold up the counties.
The point I am making is this. Because my sister said so much, I don't know where to start and where to respond from. But let me try my best, and don't stop me this time.
Yes, please.
Lee Kuan Yew said, why did Singapore become the way it did? He said, you create a meritocracy and make sure that the public service is fair and equitably set up, and make sure that they are least or minimally corrupt. That is what changed Singapore. When you come to our country, and I thought the Kenyan public may want to know that we know the difference between what performance contracting is. Performance contracting is when you already have a job, like now in all ministries. Yes. If it is Kenha, they are asked, can you tell us what you will implement this year with the budget we've given you? These are the targets we want you to achieve. And at the end of that period, an analysis is done on what the ministry has done. Number two, then you have contractual appointments. What Moses Kuria want to do is create contractual appointments. Contractual appointments are set up by whoever that wants to create this contract, and in fact, they will give you the standards that you're supposed to achieve, and they are the ones who will determine whether you're achieving or not.
No, that's not what is.
Just hold on.
Let him make his point.
Please let
Although that is actually
Please,
not.
He will make his point, you will have the right.
But that is actually
have
not.
the right to reply,
Yeah?
Senator. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying.
You had the time. Allow me.
It's a performance contract.
Allow me to-
let me
okay,
say-
so let's have
okay.
some order.
Okay.
There's a difference between those two, and we have to have clarity.
But you're misleading.
Number three, I've listened to, again, my sister talk about our civil service. Her interpretation and her understanding of the reasons why we have a problem is fantastic. Madam Oroba, your analysis is perfect. Our askaris are misbehaving. The doctors look at the way they even if you were to sign this CBA with them, there's a likelihood there are few of them who will actually not perform. You are look at us, even in parliament as members of parliament, look at the way we behave.
Yes.
We are children of this environment. This environment is the one that has created this culture that my sister was talking about, that even if you were to bring contracts today, so long as your workers are corrupt, so long as you are actually employing people not on how best qualified they are, but how you know them, you cannot change this system. So we are dealing, according to me, Ayub, we are pretending as if we are dealing with the problem. No, we are dealing with the consequences of the failure of our labor sector. And that is why I raise these issues, and we've been talking about it. And that is why I am saying, Mzee Atuoli, who's going to, this should most probably be his last speech. Time has caught up with him. Kenya is changing. I can come here and talk about how the government is doing well without being petty. I can raise issues from the Senate about my governor or my government or anybody else. That is the democracy we are fighting about. That does not mean I am fighting the government. I am shocked to hear my sister say that the governor of Kisii wants now to fire the doctors because they have refused. These are individuals who are following the law. And you will fire them, and I want to tell my governor, please don't fire them. They'll go to court, and you will finally have to pay them and give them all the compensation after you've run the case for 3 to 4 years. So don't do those things. The law is very clear. There was a CBA signed. Ayub, what Kenyans must understand, our country has no problem paying this wage bill we have. This wage bill has no problem whatsoever. We know the facts as they are. Uhuru announced Kenyans steal 2 billion shillings a day. We are at about 600 billion a year.
720 billion.
720 billion. Can you imagine what 720 billion would do to salaries of doctors, salaries of the executives who are working in different departments of government? What would happen to our nurses? What would happen to our community health workers? What would happen to the employees? The moment our employees realize that we don't appreciate their performance, that we don't give them due process for them to have expectations how somebody gets promoted. Right now, Ayub, I receive so many phone calls. I've been an officer, I'm stationed in Kwale. I've been here for 9 years. Surely I should have been transferred after 4. What happened with that system? These are the issues that we should be discussing, not how you are going to put employees on contractual appointments. Because the reality that we have, even with these contractual appointments, they will not perform so long as you are employing people without meritocracy, so long as you are not employing the best qualified, so long as you are employing people for convenience, and particularly political convenience, the system will not change. All these things we are talking, that is why I said, Ayub, when Kenyans travel out of this country, when we go to Rwanda and we are given to set up the ICT infrastructure, it is Dr. Ochodo who set it up with about 6 Kenyans and they finished. It is true, but they were picked on merit, they were remunerated accordingly, and they set up a system that is foolproof. When you talk about the Rwandese education sector, it is Kenyans who have gone there and participated with the Rwandese to set up the educational system from ECD up to university level. Can I tell you this, Ayub?
Yes.
If today I had an opportunity where my child should go to university, it would be Rwanda, because if he gets a degree with a D, I will know that was the best he got. What do we do in our country? Look at our exams. Where you ask,
yes, Senator.
And these individuals are participating. They are facilitating how our children are getting fake degrees because those children are able to pay because they are providing sexual favors and other things. True? Yes. So we must fix these DNA infrastructure which has collapsed, which has made our country become a country where people are employed not because of the service they can provide.
I have a question for Senator Onyonka. Just one question to
thank you. Yes,
Senator. Can I just ask him one question, Senator? Because we are. By the way, he's my chair of the delegation in the Senate, so he's my senior. I respect him. Do you think it is fair that for 2.5 months? You have doctors from Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital drawing full salaries, not showing up, and technically aiding deaths of the country. Do you think that just because it is in law? Can I and when I ask this, I want him, because he has said to governor, don't do it. Don't fire those people. Don't hire new people.
It will be brought to
you know why I'm asking it? You know why I'm asking that?
Yes.
Because it is his electorate in the same county who will still call him to ask him for money to take their sick people to private hospitals, because Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospitals be closed with doctors still receiving salaries. They'll come to him and say, you know, we can't go to Kisii Teaching and Referral because we're mefunga.
Can I answer you?
So do you think it is humanly fair? Even me today, when I don't show up in parliament, and by the way, we have a lot of parliamentarians who misbehave. They barely show up on minimum. But even me, because of the conscience that I have, that I'm drawing a salary to represent my people as a specially elected, do you know I ensure that I go to parliament every single session? I ensure that I meet me because I'm drawing a salary.
Okay, I'll come to you, Mbati.
Thank you.
So when the governor is trying to make sure that there are doctors at the Kisii Teaching and Referral, because the Governor Ratti is trying to make sure that the people who are dying don't die by saying, I need to hire doctors. So what is fair?
Senator, please, sometimes you just need to say a few.
Allow me my piece.
I want to beg you. The law is the law. My sister, you are a legislator.
Despite the law, I asked you, but it's all that I asked him.
Your question well taken, sir.
Yeah, I asked him if it's fair. I didn't ask him if it's legal.
It ought to have come from me. But
I asked him if he thinks it's humanly fair.
Let him respond.
You asked me a question. Can you give me the benefit
you are
of
protected.
answering you back?
Okay,
protect me.
You are protected.
Chair, you are protected, answer.
The reason why you go to parliament every day, my sister, is simply because you and me know if our salary doesn't come in 2-3 days, the way it is prescribed, if we are not given these car grants, if we are not given the allowances, we will not attend those meetings. Look at when CDF is stopped.
No, let him speak for himself.
When the government, no, allow me to make my
but they don't say we, because I am not in that.
Senator.
Okay,
let him make the point, Senator.
But it should not include me. Me, I don't go to parliament for car grants, and I don't go to parliament for salaries.
The reason why many
payments.
of these individuals come to the House, and many of them, by the way, may not even participate in the deliberations and discussions. It's not because of any particular reason. It's because there is a framework which is legal, which has given them responsibilities, and we are remunerated according to that framework. The moment you touch it, I will not show up at that parliament because I'm not Jesus. I didn't come to that parliament to provide. After all, the constitution would have said anybody who's elected member of parliament, senator, and MCA should actually be a voluntary worker who gets a sitting allowance, and very few people.
It is a calling.
Be attending.
Some of us will go for calling.
Allow me, please, please. So my point is very simple, Ayu. Treat the doctors according to the law. If there is a negotiation that must be done, create that environment. Don't call doctors to a meeting and as they're walking in, you're walking out. The reality is those doctors are not going to agree to go back to work because they know you set up the precedent of going against that CBA, you will never reverse it. It's like the Western Sahara matter. The moment you agree that you are going to allow independence to take place for Western, Morocco said, of our dead body. There are certain things you don't reverse once you've signed and agreed to move ahead.
Thank you.
The reality is the doctor's problem has nothing to do with even the county government or the national government. There was a CBA which was signed in 2017. That CBA must be honored. I am in the Senate because I want the law to be followed, and that is why I am saying, yes, I hear my sister doing wonderful gatekeeping. The governor of Kisii County can decide to fire all those people. Let him fire them. But I've already mentioned to him that the day you fire them, they will go back to court because this CBA has been verified and deposited with the court. There's nothing you can do. And this is the argument we have in our country today, that if somebody feels they have an advantage and that there's a team which is vulnerable, depending on...
Ayub, my question didn't touch on that. I feel like he's getting more time.
And Senator Ombati, we are on for a short break. When we come back, we'll be proceeding with this discussion, and the live pictures on your screens at the moment of the Secretary General of the Central Organization of Trade Unions, Francis Atwoli, and the Labour CS, Florence Bore, alongside the other officials who have just reached the venue where the celebrations will be happening today and to be officiated by President William Ruto later, and that is in the next couple of minutes, where the 2024 Labour Day will be marked here in Kenya. Of course, it's a globally celebrated day on the 1st of May, where issues in regards to the welfare of laborers in the country come under sharp focus, with the president today expected to address the country on the array of issues, including the minimum wage for all Kenyans. And when the celebrations will be starting, we'll be, of course, bringing you the live proceedings from the Uhuru Gardens where that is happening. We are due for a break here on the broadcast. When we come back, I'll start with you, Ombati, in regard to that, and also to Senator Gloria Orwoba and Senator Richard Onyonka here, as we take this discussion further to the minimum wage debate and what has been an increment, but rather which doesn't meet the exponentially growing high cost of living in the country. We welcome your contributions, and we'll be sampling them before we cross over live to Uhuru Gardens in the course of this broadcast. We are back with more after the break. Stay tuned.